Carl and Liam here from Games, Brains and Head-Banging Life, gbhblofficial for short, and we're afraid of the dark. It is episode 5 of season 1 of Are You Afraid of the Dark? Our talk through of the 90s TV series. This is the tale of the Hungry Hounds, directed again by DJ McHale and written by Anne Appleton. DJ McHale is all over this shit at the moment. There's next to no facts about this episode. There's absolutely very little about it. It's mainly about, oh, this character or actor plays another one in a later role. And as I said back in the episode 3 video, I'm not going to name those until it's retrospective rather than because it makes no sense. Like, what's the point of saying, oh, David Francis, who plays Giles, reappears in the series 2 more times later on in season 3 or 7 or whatever? No point.
Yeah, and also I can kind of see why there wouldn't be much to say about this episode.
So, you're not a big fan of this one?
I'm not. I think we are on quite a poor run as of late, and I don't. This isn't really taking it up much of a level from the previous one, sadly. But I will say that I do remember this episode vaguely in a distant memory. I remember seeing an advertisement for this on TV before it aired. It's the scene where she is walking, one of the characters is walking down a ghostly staircase, and I do very vividly remember seeing that advertised on TV to be on Nickelodeon. So I remember for that reason, but not much else.
So yeah, we might have a different view in this. I like this episode. I like this episode because of several things, really. I think it's quite an imaginative idea for a basic ghost story. But I also love a lot of the locations and sets they use. It's got a lot of that going on in it. And I ended up quite enjoying aspects of that. I still think it's flawed. And I say the words, I like it, but I don't think it's necessarily a good episode, if that makes sense. Mainly because it really doesn't have much of a story to tell. And it's amazing how it goes really fast at one stage and then drags its feet at another incredibly. It's not well basically balanced.
Yeah, I mean, I've got more detailed reasons, but I think this commits possibly the worst thing the worst thing you can really commit in anything is to be very slow and pretty boring, and that's my feeling on it. But I'll explain why.
No, you've nailed it. The ultimate sin in horror, because this is what this is. The ultimate sin is to be boring. You can be all manner of things wrong, but be boring, and that is the ultimate sin in horror for me.
Me too, I completely agree. And also I think maybe I was just on a bit of a downer from the previous episode. So I needed this one to be like good stuff, man. And then it just with another like sort of middle-ish one, and it's kind of like we kind of need that big hitter now, man. We're on a downward spiral. Yeah.
Did you watch this run in a row?
Yeah.
See, I had about a 3 or 4 day break between watching episode 4 and episode 5.
I could have used that break.
Okay. All right, cast. It's actually quite a small cast. Jennifer Gula as Amy, A.S. Sidner as Aunt Beth, David Francis as Giles, and Mia Kirshner as Pam and Dora. So you might wonder why she's playing 2 characters, but we'll explain as we go on. It is a debut storyteller. It is Kirsten's turn, her first story of the group. Aside from David, we're still running our way through the camp group, everyone having their first go. This is Kirsten's turn. And of course, we begin at the campfire. Kiki and Betty Ann are adding wood to the fire. The girls hear animal noises. But it's just Eric as he walks in making chicken sounds along with David, Frank, and Gary. For the record, the sounds they heard were not the same sounds he was making. Bullshit. Gary tries to take over the fire, which really annoys Kiki. And I was like, ooh, Gary, you cheeky bugger.
Yeah, he's been quite quiet in the background up to now, but he's got claws.
Yeah, he's beginning to step up, man. Everyone is there now but Kirsten with Kiki. And now this is what I talked about in previous episodes, but this continuity. Kiki, again, kind of takes digs at Kirsten, saying about getting dirt under her nails, doing all the work, doing the work before she gets here. And I was like, oh, we did have that early episode where she was a bit biting towards Kirsten. I don't know what Kiki's issue is with Kirsten, but she's definitely got a bit of a bee in a bonnet over her.
Here, let me do it.
I can do it. Give me the matches.
Where's Kristen?
She'll be here. Don't get your shorts in a knot.
Yeah, after the work is all done, she wouldn't want to break her fingernails.
Yeah, that seems to have gone back to one of the previous like subplots between the campmates, but I don't know like when this one like aired, because obviously the previous episode that we did.
Oh, it's the only one that did
one.
that. It's the only one. Everything became in production order.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah. So it is continuity. It's not like it was it was not like it was all out of order. It seemed like the only reason I could see why that previous episode aired was because it was a Halloween special and it was based at Halloween.
Oh yeah, I see that.
Kiki burns her fingers with a match, and Gary declares that they need to make a rule about latecomers. And I was like, oh my God, he is on one tonight. He is not happy about anyone. Proper, like, tyrant behavior from Gary. I'm down, though, because weirdly, I find him one of the most memorable of the Midnight Society. And I guess maybe it's because I've got some buried memories. And it's what you talked about in another episode, whereas he's the consistent. And I think that's probably what I'm remembering. So he's the one that I kind of have the most impression of.
Yeah, I mean, I would say Gary is like the iconic character of the show, really, because he was just in it throughout the whole run. So yeah,
it's great to see him getting a voice. I look forward to storytelling from him. Anyway, a howl is heard, and everyone gets a bit nervous about this. And a brown hound dog comes running forward, followed by Kirsten. She apologizes for being late because she had to pick up her dog, who's named Elvis. And of course, oh God, I'd have swung for him for saying this, because you know one of them is going to be like, oh, he ain't nothing but a hound dog. Get it, Elvis? I'd have been like, you shut up. Out of the meeting.
You wouldn't have lasted very long in the necessary. You'd be throwing buckets of water at people from saying their stories of shit and punching people.
Oh, they're frustrating. But it is story time.
You'd be the disapproving character every single time. People are like, that was shit.
I'll be the really unlikable one. Kirsten claims she has a tale of Eric shaking it in his boots, which does admittedly get everybody sarcastically going, ooh. And I was like, yeah. Don't big it up, Kirsten. It's not that scary. And Elvis is here to provide sound effects. So submitted for the approval of the Midnight Society, it is the tale of the Hungry Hounds. And it's about Pam, a teenage girl who likes to spend rainy days exploring her mother's attic because her mother is a hoarder who never doesn't throw anything away. There's stuff in the attic from Pam's parents, grandparents, and even relatives who've been gone for many years. Now, I'm going to get through this next part and I'm going to come back to this. So this summer, Pam's cousin Amy is visiting, and during a rainy day, they both decide to explore the stuff stored in the attic. Stop the train again on this stuff, folks. Right, this, what do you mean? Right, for starters, we see the inside of the attic. It's just an attic with lots of stuff. It is not a hoarding thing. I was expecting piles of newspapers that are hundreds of years old, jars of like feces and stuff like that, at that level. And all it is just a dusty attic. But also, man, like, so she does this every rainy day, because that's what's implied. Like, there ain't enough in there for that. But also, what the hell? But also, if that's her mum's stuff, collecting stuff from her family, memorabilia, all of that, she's okay with her daughter just climbing and pulling her way through all her stuff. There's all a lot wrong with this opening.
Yeah.
Pam finds her grandfather's old wedding suit and references how old it is and how their late Aunt Dora was born first. Pam wants to show Amy how she looks, but Amy doesn't answer her. She puts it on. She's like, look how I look. Pam goes to look for her and everything gets quiet. There's some thunder, because it's storming, and a ghost comes walking forward at her. A ghost in a white wedding dress with a veil covering her face.
Amy? Hello, Charles.
Who's Charles?
The guests are arriving, dear. It's nearly time for the wedding.
This isn't funny.
Seeing Pam in the suit, the ghost seems to think she's someone named Charles, her fiance, starts talking about a wedding. And of course, Pam is scared, but I was rolling my eyes because it's obviously Amy playing a prank, and it is Amy playing a prank. Were you surprised?
Not at all.
But I was mighty surprised to get references to Hamlet that immediately followed this. Like, what?
No, we'd expect to hear an eye for the dark.
Yeah, because they end up discussing Hamlet, in particular, the overarching concept of Hamlet, and the pair joke about it. But during this, a wind suddenly blows and knocks down a small old black leather trunk, which is filled with many old letters and black and white pictures. Amy finds a small picture frame of a young woman on horseback, in horseback riding clothes, and she looks just like Pam. Thinking at first it is Pam, Amy tells her that she didn't know she could ride horses. Pam gets really pissy about this, tells Amy that she can't ride because her mum won't let her take riding lessons. And it turns out to be a picture of their deceased Aunt Dora on a horse named Mirage. And Amy does notice how much Pam really looks like their Aunt Dora. I don't mind this little bit here. I think it's a good setup. It's a good story beat. I love the dropping in of why Pam isn't allowed to ride by her mother. That's how you just drop in information that might be relevant later on.
Yeah.
A loud sort of screeching noise startles Pam, and Amy goes to investigate. And it's coming from a wooden storage chest with the name of reading Dora Pease 1963. So clearly Aunt Dora's chest. Amy figures it's a mouse inside the chest, wants to get into it, but it's locked with a combination lock. She even points out a little hole that is probably how the mouse got in. No, so well, then that's how the mouse is going to get out, then, isn't it? Like if it went in that way, it's probably going to get out that way.
Dora Pease, 1963.
Come on, this is too creepy.
It's probably just a mouse.
No, we shouldn't touch it. Mom says let the dead rest in peace.
Look, there's a little mouse hole.
Before they can go any further with it, Pam's mother calls them down to feed the dog. You feed the dog. Then you come all the way downstairs to feed the dog. It's not that hard of a job. It's just, you know, when you just change a word and it just makes more sense in your head and just makes me happier. Walk the dog. Take the dog for a walk. That takes time. So, like, just change that one word. Pam leaves. Amy looks curiously at the chest, and as they head down, you kind of hear that mouse noise again coming from it. Clearly, it's not something weird's going on. Not very interesting at this point, I'll be honest. It's been a fairly standard setup, but the sort of, supernatural aspect, the idea of a chest, which is for a deceased figure, had me kind of going, this is just going to be about ghosts, isn't it? And I guess it kind of is.
Yeah, I mean, I do think there's definitely intrigue there. I think the whole thing of her looking like her dead relative and stuff like that's like, you're like wondering where this might go. So it does have some of that mystery going on. You're like wondering what's going to happen.
Well, I'll tell you now then. I put my Goosebumps hat on again for some stupid reason. I'm going to have to stop doing this. And I thought at this point I'd worked it out. And I thought it was going to be like, Pam is Dora and she's dead. She just doesn't know it. And that'll be a twist at the end. I don't know why the fuck I keep doing it. I need to stop doing it. This is not the same show.
R.L. Stone, man, he's messed up your mind.
Yes. Later, Pam and Amy are walking down the road. Amy isn't happy about having to spend a whole summer here. She's a bit bored. And Pam offers to tell her a secret. And she takes her to a horse pen, which houses a horse, a big black horse. Pam's family is taking care of it because the owners of the horse live in the city and only come to ride it during weekends. What the fuck is that? Doesn't make any sense. Who has a horse, only comes to ride it at the weekends, and then there's some other family look after it?
Yeah, that is very, very strange.
The horse is gentle, though, and Pam tries to climb onto it when suddenly a blue car flies up, drives up, honking its horn loudly. This obviously startles the horse. Pam falls off the fence as she was trying to climb onto it, and the person in the car is revealed to be Pam's mum. She runs over to Pam, berates her, as we kind of get the impression she's overprotective and a nervous person. You caused all this, Pam's mum. You came speeding up, honking your horn around a horse, and you're surprised that you spooked it. Like, you are completely to blame for this entire incident.
Pam! Are you all right? The animals are dangerous. I told you never to go near them.
It wouldn't be dangerous if I knew how to ride.
Without a doubt.
But yeah, Pam's a bit annoyed as well and snaps back begging for riding lessons. And her mum tells her no and doesn't want to mention it again. Pam argues that what happened to Aunt Dora was about 30 years ago, and her mom claims that it still feels like yesterday to her. And the argument ends with Amy intervening and telling Pam just to leave it. I did like that. I like the idea that just leave it. You know, this isn't going to go anywhere. So I like this part here because I thought, oh, Dora died of a riding accident, right?
Mm.
That's obviously what's going to be tied in. Dora died in a riding accident, hence why don't you riding. That is not the case at all. What the fuck?
That's a much better idea.
Like, it seems so obvious. I can't believe that. It's like when whoever the writer of this episode forgot they wrote this part when they got to the later point.
Yeah, maybe that's it.
Later, we see Pam and Amy sitting at a picnic table. They're playing board games. One of which is a Ouija board, as you fucking do.
Casual.
Exactly. Here's Monopoly. Here's Cluedo. Here's Connect 4. Here's our Ouija board. Who has that?
Maybe it's just like a cultural difference. Maybe that's something that didn't really take off over here. You know, like you said, you play Guess Who or something, and you are bored of that now. Let's see if we can contact ghosts.
It definitely feels way more like an American thing, considering the amount of films based around a Ouija board.
Yeah.
Although they do try to offer an explanation, said apparently Pam's mum used to play it all the time with Aunt Dora. Of course, they start playing with it, and almost immediately, there's no even tension building here. Pam's hand gets stuck to the planchette, and of course, it starts to move without her controlling it. Never seen that before, ever. It spells out the words, "Let me out." And Amy jokingly says that maybe it's the rodent calling from Aunt Dora's box. Then beyond Pam's control again, she moves her hand to the numbers 1, 4, and 9, and they wonder if this is the combination to the lock in the chest. You know what makes the whole situation scarier, writers, is if your characters actually react like something generally scary is going on. They act like this is just another day. If my hand is stuck to a planchette of a Ouija board and is moving up its own accord, regardless of what it's spelling out, particularly if it's spelling out a combination lock for a chest in my attic, I am not sleeping for a couple of weeks, and I'm certainly not going back in that house. But they're so casual about it. So why should I be scared?
Exactly, and you've just spelled out probably one of my biggest criticisms of this episode, and it is the lack of reaction that either of the characters have to a lot of the stuff that happens throughout in just completely unrealistic manner. And that kind of took me out of it. Like you said, it doesn't make you feel the fear because they're not feeling it.
There it is. So, of course, the girls go to the attic again to try the numbers and see if it'll open. Pam is nervous, but Amy thinks it's no big deal, and the chest will open and the mouse will finally get out. Pam claims her mom is very sensitive about the chest, as her mom apparently feels that she's haunted by the ghost of Aunt Dora. And again, my head was like, ooh, what if it was a riding accident that Pam's mother caused by spooking the horse? Tying it back to what she did with the car.
I can see it.
But Amy has been kind of forthright in this episode. Thank God as well, because she's the one moving it forward. Her character's just like moving it forward by being like, nah, not doing it, gonna carry on. She opens the chest. The chest opens and a huge rodent does run out. And I was like, well, that shut me up. There actually was one in there. All right.
What a twist.
After they recover, they go look inside the chest, and the chest is steaming with smoke. Smoke is pouring out of it. And they can now see it's filled with Aunt Dora's old riding clothes, still covered in a bit of grass. And they realize that's not been cleaned since they were last worn. Yeah, but it would have been shaken out, right? Like, I don't know. I'm overthinking parts like that. It's just when they... Go on.
Yeah, I've got a theory that maybe actually the trunk was rigged with some kind of explosive device that didn't like go off correctly when someone went in there to try and steal her shit. So they kind of dodged a bullet there. That's my theory anyway. Sometimes you got to make up your own little theories of interesting things when the episode isn't providing enough itself, you know.
Agreed, but also when they're going to do something specific, like point out that there's still grass on her riding clothes, so they've not been worn or used since they were put away, I then have to. So, I mean, you've got to that specific point. They didn't have to write that in. They could have just been riding clothes in there. But by adding that in, I'm now going, well, no, they would have taken the clothes off the dead body. The grass would have fallen. Do you see what I mean? Like, that's the problem. Don't specify, because it forces me to start specifying. Anyway, Pam puts her aunt's old red riding coat on, and a steam cloud slowly and quickly engulfs her after she buttons it up. And basically, we have to kind of tell you here what happens to follow along. But she becomes possessed by the spirit of her her late Aunt Dora, something that Amy is completely unaware of. Well, it doesn't spell it out for us. It does make it very clear that this is the case, and they kind of follow along what happens. You kind of need to know it. So I think the episode was right to make it obvious that this had happened. And everything starts going a bit weird here. Pam walks over to the window and opens it, and we see it's pitch black outside. Amy is like, wow, it's nighttime already. Pam doesn't answer. She goes outside, walks down a mysterious railing staircase that leads into darkness of a forest and is filled with mysterious smoke. I just love how this looks. I love how otherworldly from the window, staircase, and the woods. I think the locations are immense.
Yeah, I do agree. The imagery of that, like I said, is memorable to me. So I think it looks cool.
What is this? Pam?
Amy is actually confused, doesn't know where they are, and doesn't know what's happening, but continues to follow Pam. They head through the woods, hearing animals. Amy's trying to convince Pam to go back. Amy, I don't know if it's like a whole bravery thing, but she's not quite reacting realistically. She's like, oh, Pam, let's go back and all that, instead of being like, Pam, what the fuck is going on? Where are we? Do you mean?
Exactly, and it just seems like a complete no-brainer. I mean, I know they're trying to act. She obviously believes that she lives in the real world and these things cannot possibly be happening the way that they are happening. But it seems fairly obvious to me that the jacket she put on herself is probably having some kind of effect on her, whether or not that is supernatural or otherwise. Maybe removing the jacket might be your first idea, you know?
Or at least grab her by the hand and like pull her, or just something.
Yeah, and I think like the performances are decent in this episode, but I found these long scenes of her being possessed and pretty slow and mundane as she's just walking around. Considering what's come before it was already quite slow as well.
Well, I don't think we've quite reached the slowest part yet, but I know what you're talking about. There's a bit coming up where we kind of just repeat over and over again and don't really move forward. It's like there was a delaying tactic because they didn't have enough. They knew they only had 2 minutes for an end and they needed to fill an extra 5. But they do end up in a cemetery. Amy reads the gravestones and finds out it's family members for the past couple of 100 years. And she finds Pam standing in front of Dora's grave. Pam is holding a bone in her hand and asks about it. Pam says, Mon petit rouge. Mon petit rouge. And she explains that the bone she's holding is a gift from a fox, and foxes leave presents. Do they? I live in London. I see a lot of foxes. They ain't never been dropped off a gift by a fox, unless it's like a dead animal or a shit.
Yeah.
Pam continues to explain that she called the fox Mon Petit Rouge, meaning my little red one, and the fox was being kept in a cage for an upcoming fox hunt. However, she grew to love the little fox. She explained that she didn't want the dogs to kill him during the fox hunt, so she planned to set him free. For some reason, which I can't work out, she waited to the day of the hunt, waking up before dawn and setting Mon Petit Rouge free. Why did she wait to the day of the hunt?
Yeah, that was a big mistake on her part.
Because there's no secret that the dogs may not have had the same amount of food they had previously before doing a fox hunt, because they kind of want the dogs to be rabid for the fox. Because when she opens the cage, it got out, began to run around, and the hounds in another part of the barn could smell the damn fox and started to go crazy. It ended up running into the fox ended up running into the woods where the hunters were, and panicking that it was going to be hunted regardless, she got upon a horse Mirage and chased after it. As she chased after it, something shone in Mirage's face, and Mirage missed a jump, and it fell to the ground, and both of them died from the fall. So that's apparently how she died. You can say that is kind of the horse riding accident, but it's not. It's not. It's based around this fox hunt idea, which I just couldn't understand why they overcomplicated it. It just felt so overtly complicated. Thrown in this weird fox idea, thrown in a fucking fox hunt. None of it made sense at all. This light that shone on Mirage's face, and all of this is being told to us, not shown. was really frustrating.
Yeah, they should have definitely cut away and at least showed us something.
Yeah. Randomly, a ghost of an old man named Giles appears. Amy backs away in fright, but Pam doesn't react at all, and he talks to Pam as if she's Dora. He begins telling her that he was basically wondering when she would get around to getting her chores done, and it turns out that morning she forgot to feed the hounds before freeing Mon Petit Rouge. She tells Giles that she has come to feed the hounds, and he tells her that she should have done that when they were still alive. Oh, so he's aware he's a ghost. He's aware he's dead. Okay. She tells Giles that she couldn't get back until now, and Amy tells the ghost Giles that she's not Dora, she's Pam, but he completely ignores her. And then he says when he found the hounds later that day, they were nearly starved to death. And I jumped. I was like, oh, no, they wouldn't, would they? Be that brave? That they looked at him like he was food, and he couldn't hold them off because they were so hungry. And I'm like, oh my God, they ate him. They ripped him apart. Fuck you, episode. No, he got scared and died of a heart attack. I was like, why? Why would you chicken out again with that? What is the fear? Is the idea of the hounds ripping him apart? I mean, it is more horrible than him dying of a heart attack. But if he died of a heart attack, likely the hounds still ate him.
Exactly, yeah.
But yeah, Pam apologizes and Giles gets a bit mad, screaming, why didn't you feed me? And runs to attack her. And they both end up running off. They run into a barn, and in there, Pam lights a gaslighter in. She says to Amy that he was the stable keeper. Who cares? I don't care what his job was. We've already established everything else about it. I don't care what his job was. Did you? Oh, well, that clears everything up.
They're trying to develop his character. Come on.
A loud locking sound is heard, and they realize they're now locked in.
I'm sorry, Giles.
Why didn't you feed the hounds?
The barn run!
For some reason, I have no reason why explanation for this. We now cut back to the clearing with Eric teasing Elvis about smelling a fox, and there's some banter back and forth before Kirsten continues his story. Well, why cut back there? What a waste of time.
Yeah, I can only think they have so little material. They've just got to put that in there to pad it out, I guess.
And yeah, because this is kind of where it slows down for me the most. Amy and Pam are trapped in the barn. Amy is insisting that she has to feed the hounds. Amy finally realizes that it's the jacket that's causing the issue, but she can't get Pam to take it off. She can't get her to take it off.
Can you believe it? It's the jacket. Oh my God, revelation. Unbelievable.
I know, considering what the scenario is, her whole thing is, can you take the jacket off, please? Is like, take it off her, drag her to the floor and rip the jacket off, tear it off her if need be.
Yeah, I just struggle to buy into a lot of Amy's reactions throughout this episode. From simply blindly following Pam into the woods at night to her lack of reaction to a ghost clearly standing before her. I think her skepticism can only be stretched so far. That is a huge problem with me.
No, I get it. So yeah, now she's convinced Dora's inside Pam. She does try to speak directly to her, explaining who they are. And I thought, oh, that could be an interesting twist in it. Dora realizing that, oh my God, these are my whatever they'd be, great nieces or great nieces or whatever. I think that could work. Yeah, no, it'd just be nieces. Why am I saying great nieces? It'd just be nieces. Yeah. But Dora doesn't actually believe her. We now see the wooden door to where the hounds are kept, and it's pounding and shaking, and the ghosts of the hounds are hungry. I really like that idea of the banging at the door. Never really see it. Just they're ghostly hounds. All right, unfortunately, they kind of drop the ball with that, I feel, when we get to a little bit further along. But at first, I was like, oh, I like the idea of never really seeing it, but just imagining slobbering, starving, hungry hounds behind the door.
Yeah, I agree. That's cool.
Dora, listen to me. We're your nieces. You're inside Pam's body.
Nonsense. I have no nieces. My brother and my sister are 10 years old. Now I've got to feed those hounds. They're starved before a hunt, you know.
Pam is going to open the door. She has to feed them no matter what. But Amy rightfully grabs Pam, drags her to a wall closet and locks her in. Through the door, the pair argue it, and Amy agrees to get Hound some food, going around, finding a ladder, and basically finding a bag with food in it. And I was like, oh, that's really easy. I didn't expect it to be literal food. I thought, like, you know, ghostly thing. I thought it was going to be a bit more imaginative than just here's some kibble.
Yeah, like you said, too easy, and just like, oh, I need to get them some food. Oh, there's a bag of food. That's lucky.
Yeah. But while this is happening, Pam has used her belt to unhook the latch and basically escape. As Amy's dragging a heavy bag to the Hound's door, she pleads with Pam to wait. For some reason, Amy doesn't just stop dragging the bag and grab Pam again. She's kind of dragging the bag and saying to Pam, just wait a second, wait a minute. Fucking woman.
Moron.
But yeah, Pam eventually does open the door, and the Hounds come running at full speed, forcing Amy to drop the bag of food. They chase after Amy, but she gets on a hay block and basically tries to hold them off as the barn door begins to creak open. Yeah, this is the problem I have with it, is this actually takes away from the more imagination thing. I, again, wouldn't have actually let you see them. When they come running out, I'd have switched to the POV. And then have Amy get on the hay bale, and then have only shoot it from Amy's perspective as she's trying to fight like things off. So you never see them. It's still all left up to your imagination of what kind of beasts they are.
That's true, and then they could have saved probably some money there as well, rather than having these actual dogs running in, and they could have been more creative, like you said, because this is one of those moments where, like you've mentioned before, where you kind of like in your mind you were expecting it to go a certain way, and I don't know why, but I guess because I was kind of bored by the episode up to this point, I started getting into my mind that there was a possibility that one or both of them might get torn to shreds by some hounds here, or at least like maybe some of their clothes might get torn, or they might get like just bitten, you know. I know that's out of the realm of possibility that could possibly ever happen, but maybe something like that can happen. Well, I thought it was interesting how you've had this episode where you have basically some sort of dog violence going on, and then the previous episode we also had that with the dog appearing to trip the kid during the race. I don't know, just thought that was kind of interesting, one after the other.
No, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. Truth be told, I'd lost all kind of semblance of there being anything really horror related this, because if you weren't brave enough to tell us that the stable master had been ripped apart by Hungry Hounds, you're never going to do anything with the actual children, the youngsters of it. But I did have this brief flicker of hope for something different in a moment. And I'll mention it when we get to it, because basically the barn door opens and what appears to be Mon Petit Rouge is seen running out. The hounds chase after the fox, the ghostly fox, basically the long-awaited fox hunt. And I thought, oh, cool. Are we going to get to see a sort of shot where we see these ghostly figures on horseback kind of starting this long-awaited fox hunt? And maybe that's what breaks the spell, was the fox hunt had to happen. There's as much as Amy, as much as Dora had hoped to change the fate of the fox, she couldn't. It was always going to happen. And now that it's the event is occurring, the spell would break effectively and everyone would be able to lie to rest. And I thought we might get that imagery and that thought. Yeah. It wouldn't necessarily make much sense in the context of what we've seen at this point, but at least I thought it might give me a cool visual look.
Yeah, I agree with that. They should have gone that direction, definitely.
Amy claims that Mon Petit Rouge saved them, and she calls for Pam but doesn't see her. Heading outside, she sees Pam in full riding gear mounted on her horse Mirage, and she rides off into the night. Amy cries for her to wait and come back, but can't keep up with her. So there we go. That was my hope stash. I was like, oh, man. It's just her and a horse. But then again, I was like, what if it's fated for her to... Are we going to see her break her neck? No, we're not. Of course not. I wasn't actually thinking at this stage.
But that would have been like a cool way to go about it. You know, take that dark twist, although history tragically repeating itself, you know, but it just seems to me like, not to go into too deeply, like we said, it just seems like they're lacking that little bit of balls to go to the next level, some of these things.
And I do understand to a certain degree, it's still aimed at a younger audience, but I feel like Goosebumps was a lot braver than this. And this feels very, very scared to do anything.
The amount of times that Goosebumps ended on like a crazy cliffhanger where we were like, holy shit, it ended. That means all those characters died because the way it ended. And
Mhm.
like clearly you didn't have to show it, but you can insinuate it, and that it does lack that.
So basically, Amy goes running through the woods after Pam, but finds the flight of stairs and climbs back up with them. This takes her back to the present time in Pam's attic. The window, closes and slams shuts behind her. And Amy, naturally thinks Pam is trapped in the past as Dora. So she's kind of worried what she's going to tell Aunt Beth. And I was like, what an underreaction that is. Oh, we're going to
I
tell
know.
Aunt Beth.
After everything you've just seen, oh my God.
But actually, Pam's here and she doesn't seem to remember what happened. She's back to normal. Amy then requests they leave the attic because it's haunted and she can't stand it anymore. Pam is surprised because she thought she didn't believe in ghosts. Then she says she has to feed the dogs, and Amy freaks out because she's like, you only have one dog. Pam says, oh, that's what I meant. I didn't feed the dog. Arguing a bit back forth. And then Amy pulls some food out of her pocket and smiles, saying that she is just a thing. And it's a really underwhelming ending, isn't it?
An underwhelming episode, ending to what I think is a fairly underwhelming episode, regardless of some nice imagery. And I do think the idea on paper is decent, but I just thought it was very slow and nothing much really happens, and doesn't really amount to much. That's just my thoughts on it.
Yeah, we'll add this part because back at the campfire, Kirsten tells everyone that Pam asked her mom if she could take riding lessons again, and her mom agreed, as her mom was apparently no longer haunted by her sister Dora, and the ghost was no longer tormented by the howling of the Hungry Hounds. I didn't get it because what occurred that we saw was effectively just a repeat of what happened in theory. The Mon Petit Rouge was set free. The hounds chased after it, being starving. She chased after the hounds and Mon Petit Rouge on the horse. And of course, that would result in her dying. How did it get undone? Like, how did the series events get done? That's just what occurred. So surely the ghost would still be tormented. Surely it would have been more sensible to have a scene where the dogs get fed and Mon Petit Rouge either escapes and lives. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's changing the narrative.
Yeah, they shouldn't resolve anything. So I don't really get it.
No. And apparently everyone's really pleased with the story. And Gary declares the meeting officially closed and throws out this wonderful line. Don't forget to feed your dog or he may have a bone to pick with you. No, Gary, no. That's not leader behavior. That's not leader dialogue.
Bad Gary.
Yeah, I said at the start, actually talking this through, I was maybe being a bit too kind at the start. I still like elements of it, in particularly the visuals, and I do think the acting is quite strong. I think there was some imagination here, but maybe again, and this is a common thing, the writing isn't as strong as what everyone else is doing. We need some of the consistent good writers we had from the Goosebumps series to come along and start picking this up, man. Start being a little braver here and there. They had so many opportunities in this episode, more than any other, to just throw a little bit of darkness into it without overdoing it. And it would have been such a really cool thing, but they keep chickening out and then making it worse. But ultimately, it does slow down so much in the barn that if you haven't been gripped up to that point, you're only going to be left with a bad impression overall.
Yeah, you put it perfectly. Like you said, they could easily do little things to make it a little bit darker here and there, but not necessarily to show things, do it insinuations, and that sort of thing. But they just don't really take it to that next level, which is unfortunate. And with Goosebumps, obviously, people behind those episodes did a good job, but they were obviously pulling from the books written by R.L. Stine himself. So, obviously, the man himself wrote such creative stories, and without that, it seems like so far, Eye of the Dark is struggling a little bit, unfortunately.
It is, and it's a timely reminder. It is not well worth remembering that ultimately that the source of the Goosebumps TV series is the imaginative R.L. Stine. We're not having that here, and we are also having we're up to episode 5, and I think we've had 4 different writers so far. So that shows again a consistency. I'm hoping as we go on, we might find a team or a person that's particularly strong and it just continues throughout. We shall see, I guess. But yeah, so the run isn't going too well. Season 1 is not the brightest spark it can be. This is episode 5, The Tale of the Hungry Hounds. It meets slight approval for me, mainly, I think if I was at the meeting and I was that guy and I've just been hating everyone's story up to this point, I might be feeling a little guilty. So I'd be a bit nice to Kirsten and say, you know what? Yeah, it's cool, Kirsten. So I'm going to give it that.
Yeah, I do think it is probably a slight improvement of the previous episode, so that's something.
Take that. There you go. We are afraid of the dark. Are you? You got any thoughts and you know what to do? Let us know in the comments.
Thank you very much for watching. If you liked what you saw, please help us out by giving us a thumbs up and hitting that subscribe button. If you really liked what you saw, consider donating to keep the website and channel running by buying us a coffee via our coffee page or picking up some merch from our Big Cartel store. You can check us out on gbhbl.com as well as via our social media, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, as well as listen to our interviews via SoundCloud, Apple Music and Spotify. Just search for GBHBL. Games, horror and heavy metal. What else is life for?